Well, we finally get to meet, Jerry. How are you?
I'm doing good, thank you. How are you doing?
Great. I love your background there.
Yeah, I did that picture for um, October, Inktober drawing thing. They have this thing where you draw a picture each day based on some kind of topic that the originator of the thing.
So let's talk about how you got into philosophy.
Well,
You want to give us your journey there?
when I was about, I think, 12 years old or so, I got a bow and arrow set for Christmas. And I've always been kind of a spiritually minded person, even when I was a little kid. Anyway, my grandparents lived on the edge of town next to a military academy where they had this very large marching field that was just grass. And so I had two uncles that were just a little older than my brother and myself. And so we went out there in that field and we were shooting arrows in the air and stuff. And it was pretty thick grass, but it was cut short. Anyway, a bird landed, and so I shot at it, but missed. But in the process, my arrow got buried underneath the grass. And so I couldn't find it. I looked all over for it and couldn't find it. So I decided I would stand in one location and I asked God to give me a sign to show me where my arrow was. And so I stood in one place and then I just turned around in a circle until I saw my arrow was red in color. And so I saw a glowing line, red line above the ground. And so I walked over there and dug in the grass and there was my arrow.
That's pretty cool. Now that's something that a 12-year-old could do, but I doubt anybody who's an adult would be that open to such a thing. You understand what I mean? It's like at that age, you believe anything is possible, and you're this, very innocent way. You're asking God to show you something that was so trivial, just to find your arrow, but God answered that. So that was like that must have been a big revelation for you that God is real and things like that.
Well, when I worked at Ampex, I met a lady who was into psychic stuff, and she would go to these meetings and stuff where I was able to learn about mental telepathy and psychometry and stuff. Psychic phenomena. And through that, I guess that was part of my learning about stuff that's beyond the physical. And eventually, through that, I met some people who were involved in Siddha Yoga. And so I started doing Siddha Yoga and had an opportunity to go to Ann Arbor, Michigan to a teacher's training course for Siddha Yoga. And after that, I came back and I was a center leader for Siddha Yoga and taught meditation.
What is this?
Siddha. Siddha. Siddha.
Siddha. And how is that different from another type of? I know nothing about yoga, so.
Yeah, there's many branches of yoga. The one that most people relate to is Hatha Yoga, which is those physical exercises where you stretch and go into certain postures and stuff. And there's yoga that has to do with your breathing, where you focus on your breathing and you breathe in a certain way, the breath of fire and stuff like that. But Siddha Yoga is a yoga where the grace of the Guru is bestowed upon you by a touch or a word, and that is supposed to awaken your Kundalini and start you on your spiritual path. And while I was in Ann Arbor, Michigan, well, actually, an interesting thing that happened before I went to Michigan. A friend of mine loaned me the money to make it able for me to go to Ann Arbor. And prior to going there, I had a dream where I was in a meeting room with a bunch of swamis who had saffron robes on and sitting around a table. And they were talking about Siddha Yoga organization stuff. And then I came into the room and sat down and started talking with them. And I thought, oh, that was kind of a cool dream. And then when I went to Ann Arbor, one of the swamis was talking about a dream he had where he saw he was in a meeting with our guru, Baba, or Swami Muktananda was the guru at that time. And so they were all sitting around the table, and he was telling this in one of the lectures that that they gave during that training. So Baba came in and started talking to them, and then he realized, wait, Baba doesn't speak English, and this guy is speaking English. And he said he had blonde hair too. So he mentioned that in the class that about that. And so after the class was over, I went and told him, I said, I was that guy. And he thought I was Baba, the guru. And he said, oh, you're going to be the next guru. I said, no, I don't think so.
So I feel like we missed something here, because there was a time in your youth, you were a Catholic, right? Yeah. So when why don't you tell me like how you left that and found?
Well, when I was in high school, I started not going to church every Sunday. And when I was a little kid, my mom was very strict, and when we'd go to church with her, we'd have to sit there very still and be quiet and stuff. And I always hated going to church with her, because if I misbehaved in any way, I'd get a spanking when I got home. So that didn't make me feel very good about going to church. And so when it came time to go to church on Sunday, I'd go hide under the stairs. And so they couldn't find me.
That reminds me of, that brought up a memory of going to church. And I'm dyslexic, but I also had what they call ADHD, or back then it was ADD. But for me, it was a little bit different. I didn't really act out so much, but I remember sitting in church one time, and I had this overwhelming compulsion to stand up on the pew and then run across the tops of the pews, jumping from pew to pew and getting up on the altar or podium, whatever, it's called, an altar, I think, where the priest stands, and just like, I don't know, just like start dancing or something. And this feeling, this compulsion, it took every bit of will that I had to not do that. And also, instead of doing that, I would swing my legs really vigorously. And I remember, and this was school, it wasn't with family, it was a school thing, because every Friday we had to go to church. And I remember the nuns like swatting me, hitting me, telling me to be still, and it just took everything I could. That's one thing I would do, like, to entertain myself while sitting there. And then the other thing was, there were these lamps that hung down from the ceiling that look exactly like the UFOs in that picture behind you right there.
Mm.
And I was a big sci-fi fan, like The Day the World Stood Still, and other ones where the UFOs are crashing into the Capitol building. And in my mind, these hanging lamps would start flying around the room, shooting laser beams at each other. So I wasn't paying attention to anything else. I was watching a movie that was happening in my head, just because the whole thing was so boring for me and so difficult for me to sit there. And I hated it too. I had to wear a bow tie. Like that was like part of
You had to dress up all the time to go to church.
and I never would remember to bring my bow tie. I would always lose it. The nuns would always give me another one that was old, crumpled up, been sitting in a drawer forever.
So after I got into Siddha yoga, I started meditating and doing chanting and stuff like that. And
but was this a religion for you?
Pardon?
Was this a religion for you? Or was it
no,
more of a protocol exercise you did?
It was well, it still is a way to be centered and to focus on being here now and finding the joy of the moment kind of stuff. That was the awakening process to find your divinity, I guess. That was to be like Jesus, I guess, was my endeavor.
But this doesn't sound to me like a religion with dogmas and teachings and things like this. This sounds more like of a philosophy.
Yeah, it's spiritual practice.
Spiritual practice, yeah. And you didn't try out any other religions like in Protestant or Buddhism or anything like that?
I read about Buddhism. Actually, my guru gave me the name Siddhartha.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I never went by that though. And I also read some of the Bible. I never read it from front to back, but I studied it a little bit. And in the process of all this stuff, I was reading stuff by Jane Roberts, The Nature of Personal Reality, Seth Speaks, and that's when I first read Education of Oversoul 7 and the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ, stuff like that was where my attention was.
So if I were to ask you right now, what's your religion, what would your answer be?
I don't have a religion.
Okay, yeah.
I'm a spiritual being living in a physical body.
See, you got there a lot faster than I did. I thought that you had to have a religion in order to understand God and the meaning of life. And then I went to Seventh-day Adventists for 8 or 9 years and did tons and tons of biblical studies and prophecy, and trying to understand, because I was under the belief that the second coming of Christ was going to happen in my lifetime. I had gotten confused by that message that I received that told me that I was living in the end of an age. And I always wondered, in Catholic Church, they always tell you Christ is coming back someday, but don't worry about it because it'll never happen in your lifetime. Basically, that was the way they put it. So I went from Seventh-day Adventist, then I found flaws in their religion. And so I thought, okay, then I started looking into Buddhism. Okay, and so the way I understand Buddhism, right, and is that well, the cause of all suffering is desire, right? You've heard that before.
Yeah, I don't think that's true.
Okay, all right.
According to,
Well, I agree with
if
you, but
if you read the post that I put on Telegram, where I share the daily quotes of Abraham Hicks, quotes of the day,
mhm,
the Abraham is this awareness, consciousness that channels through this lady, and basically what he says or they say is that desire is the engine that keeps the manifestation going.
okay, cool. I like that. Yeah. So and all, you know, and the Buddha himself, you know, his teachings are all about giving up the desire for material things and reaching nirvana, which is another way of saying it is singularity, or a non-dualistic existence.
Well, I think part of the programming that we've all gone through is based on a lie to the very beginning, and that is that there is duality, and there is no duality. There is only one source in creation, and that which is in manifest and unmanifest form. There's only one source for all of that. So it's like a coin has two sides. It has if you want to think of positive and negative, those are contained within the one manifestation of that which people call God, or the all-encompassing being. So
Right. But I mean, if you go back to before there was a physical reality, so the pure consciousness of God, when I mean
that's one thing that they talked about in Education of Hope recently, and they said the beginning is right now. This is the beginning right now. This right now is the beginning. It's always the beginning, because
right,
now is the only time there is.
right,
So God never had wasn't there and then was there. God has always been here.
uh-huh, yeah, I agree with that. But was there ever a time when God was, and the consciousness, right, the consciousness, the source of all consciousness,
We
was
think of things in linear time, and when you expand beyond time and space, it's all happening at once.
right. Yep,
So
I agree with that. So we can't. I'm putting it wrong when I say there was a time when there was only consciousness, right? But I guess what I'm trying to get to is well, it's really hard to talk about it, because you're right. Time, there is no such thing as time, and that's the only way we know to think, right?
and it's the way we've been programmed
Well, and it's also just our 3D
to exist
experience.
yeah in the
It's all we.
physical.
I mean, there have been times when I've been tripping, and everything melted away, all time and space melted away, and I felt like I was a singularity. There was one time in particular when I took some acid, and it was in the middle of the night, and we snuck into the swimming pool of an apartment building that we could swim in, and the water was very warm, must have been around body temperature, and I was floating on my back with just my face above the water, and it was raining, very warm summer night, and it was raining, and I felt like my body disappeared, and everything around me disappeared. And it felt like my consciousness was the only thing that existed. And there was no separation between where my body and infinity. I really felt this, just pure conscious thought. That's the closest thing that you can come to understanding singularity. Okay. And let me try to get to my point of what I'm talking about. There are some people who say that this is the goal of incarnation, right? That you get to a point where you no longer feel any separateness from the source, and all is one, right? And they say that this is the goal. This is why you have these multiple lives, and you have to go all through this stuff, and then at some point you graduate and you reach nirvana. And nirvana is rejoining your higher self with the source of all. And then you would be in that state, just like when I was in that swimming pool and I felt no separation between myself and the universe. Okay. And there's Brad Johnson, who I highly respect. The guy is obviously way above me in many things, but he teaches this, that this is not what we are here to have, like this duality of dark and light, good and bad. He thinks that we're here to get back to that source of all one. I disagree with that. I think why
we're in it because this is where it's at.
Right. Because singularity is basically nothingness.
It's everything and nothingness at the same time.
At the same time. But like when I was in that state, in that swimming pool, I had nobody to talk to. I had nobody to love other than myself, which was fun. And I felt this love, this all-encompassing euphoria, right? But it's also kind of lonely, right?
Yeah.
I couldn't see anything because it was completely black, and I couldn't see myself. And this is why we have this plane of existence where we live now, where we have male, female, night, day, good, evil. And I wouldn't want to have an existence where I'm completely at one with source. Would you? What do you think? Am I wrong?
I think I am right now. The difference is seeing the multiplicity as all is one. So you are me and I am you. One way that I think about it, thought about it recently after reading Education of Oversoul 7, is the idea of, I play online games where I have these characters who live in this world, and in the way that it's expressed in that Education of Oversoul 7, I would be the oversoul of all those characters that I control in that world. And so, excuse me, the world that we're expressing in right now, this person right here is a character that is manifesting in playing in this game that we call life. And the oversoul, I am in the game. When I play in the game, I'm controlling those characters, but those characters don't even know that I exist.
Right.
And this is the way that it is for us as manifestations in this reality. For the most part, people don't realize that there is this source which is running through us, playing in this game, that we may not even be aware of, but that we are that source playing this game.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm a gamer from way back, you know. Dungeons and Dragons back in the day with
Yeah,
with
I used to play
dice and
Rune Quest, which was
the card game, right?
it was the same as Dungeons and Dragons, but it was another uh, venue for that
Oh well,
tabletop
it wasn't
game.
as good as D&D, man.
Uh,
This is so you play video games?
yeah, I play Elder Scrolls Online quite a bit. I used to play EverQuest 2 and EverQuest 1, and I was a artist for EverQuest 2, where I'd make stuff and they'd put it in the in-game store and sell it to the players to put in their houses and stuff. They had player studios, what they called it, where players would create stuff and submit it, and they add it to the game and people could buy it. And I still make a few cents here and there on stuff that
That's
people
great.
buy.
So you know who Bill Hicks is, right? You remember his famous stand-up show where he talks about life being a game? Have you ever seen that?
No, I don't recall.
But it's basically the same thing. And at some point, I can't remember when I adopted this idea that this life that we're living here is not to be taken so seriously. You know, it really is just a game. And there are these things that society tells you you're supposed to do, like get married, have children, have a career, buy a house, and all these other things. And that's like their rules of the game. And a long time ago, I decided, you know what? I'm the game master here. I'm the dungeon master here. I'm going to play the game by my own rules.
Yeah. We are the creator of our own reality. And that's what the book.
When did you figure that out?
Well, through the process of reading many books, but Nature of Personal Reality really talks about how you create your own reality. And that's one thing. People don't understand the manifestation process and what their part in that manifestation process is. The condition of the world right now, each person is creating their own experience in this world. And when they pay attention to stuff that is not in line with their higher well-being, they create that. And,
right.
And the problem is they don't know that they're creating it, and so they continue to create it.
Okay, but I'm curious for you, Jerry. When did you start to understand that? Like, how old were you? And it's one thing. It's one thing to believe it. It's another thing to actually know it.
You understand what I mean? Knew it, but it's an unfolding process to where you. My understanding about the ascension process is, you know, like a lot of people think of religion or spiritual practices as you're supposed to limit doing this and doing that, and don't do this and don't do that. But and my understanding is that as you ascend into greater awareness, the field of your play increases according to your level of awareness. So as you ascend, you have greater and greater awareness. And with greater and greater awareness comes responsibility to handle that properly, and also to it enables you to be able to do things that you couldn't do before. So Jesus or Yahweh or whatever his real name was able to do things because he had expanded his consciousness, and in his expanded conscious state, he realized the abilities that he had at his fingertips, and he made use of them. So I think that the ascension process is waking up to your divinity, something that you have always been and are right now. It's just uncovering it and becoming aware of it, and letting it come into manifestation in your life. And the way you
But
do that is accepting it and saying, I am that I am.
I love that. And you had that experience with the arrow. See, I didn't have anything like that until I was much older. I think that is one reason why you say you always knew it. Maybe you always did, but that, I think that probably was one thing that solidified it for you. And for me, it was in the mid 90s, I was starting to understand this concept, and it was the book, The Celestine Prophecy for me.
Yeah, that's a good book. I got the video of that too. It's very good.
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting. You know, my friend Don Milton knew the author, and he has an original manuscript of that book.
I think I remember you guys talking about that.
Which I thought was just wild. This connection that, you know, this was a big thing for me. And so I read that book around 96, and I really started to embrace this idea of focusing intention on things, looking for, like if you had two paths diverge in the woods, and one is just brighter somehow than the other. And then in 1999, when I'm not going to go into the story again, but when I hiked the Appalachian Trail, and then I had all this trail magic happen, one thing after another, where everything when I needed something, it would appear there. It would literally, I mean, not manifest in front of my eyes, but I would look and there it was. I've told the story about the spoon, how I was always losing spoons. And then one day I'm sitting on this beautiful view overlooking the Blue Ridge Mountains, and I had my hot meal there and no spoon. And I looked down, and there's this brand new Lexan spoon that would cost $15 if you bought it new. And that was on, here's another one though. Anna and I were going into the White Mountains, and the White Mountains were really treacherous. Even at this time of year, this would have been September, right? And there was really difficult terrain, and you didn't want to have a heavy pack, and there were huts along the way where you could eat. And I was always in charge of how much food we took. And if we ran out of food, it was on me. It was my fault. And this was a big responsibility. And so I figured we could get to these certain huts, and we only needed this much food. Well, because of some bad weather, we didn't move as fast as I thought we were going to move. And sure enough, about day 3, we were running out of food. And, Anna's like, what are we going to do? Now we don't have enough food to get there. And this is so wild. When I think about it, I get goosebumps. I went over to relieve myself in some bushes, and there are like 3 or 4, I think there were 4 MREs stashed under the bushes. Meals ready to eat, the military meals.
Mm-hmm.
And I just couldn't believe my eyes. They were brand new, unopened. And I went and I gathered these all up, and I said, look, here's our food for the rest of the trip. Somebody had packed these in there, decided they were too heavy, they didn't eat them, and they just discarded them. And that was the food that got us through. And there was another time something like that happened. I made a miscalculation, and we were 2 or 3 days from the nearest town, and we had enough food for half a day. But it was after that hike on the Appalachian Trail, that's when I said, okay, I'm not just a believer anymore. Now I know that I create my own reality. And after that, I never worried about anything ever again.
That's why it's good to be grateful for everything that you have, because that's like telling the universe, more of this, please.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyways, how long have we been talking here? It's got to be close to an hour.
I don't know. I haven't kept track of time.
I think maybe this is a good place to stop. We got into some great stuff here, Jerry. I really appreciate your view.
Thank you. I enjoy talking to you.
Cool. Any last words before we say goodbye?
Live long and prosper. Blessings to us all.
Yeah, man. Cool. All right. So maybe next time I wanted to talk about conspiracy theories a bit. And just maybe I'm going to set it up for our next conversation. You said
if you ask me questions, I would be able to talk more then.
All right. Well, I've got to do this then. I want to ask, what was the first conspiracy theory? Now, conspiracy theory meaning you were always told it was one way, but actually it was something else that was being hidden from you. So do you have something like that? What was the first time you realized that this reality isn't what you were told, that there was something else that was being hidden from you or something like that?
I can't think of anything right off the cuff.
Okay, well, I'm going to share mine. Okay, my very first one. Okay. I was 6 or 7 years old, and I told you I was insomniac, and I was, even at that age, I had insomnia. I would lie in bed for hours, unable to sleep. And it was Christmas Eve, and my parents used to do this whole charade where they would get cookies and leave them half eaten, and milk and carrots outside that looked like a reindeer had eaten. And then when you woke up, my parents would say, "Oh, look, Santa Claus was here. See, the cookies have been eaten. See, the reindeer ate the carrots," you know? And of course, at 5 or 6, you believe that, you know? Why would my parents lie to me, right? So you believe it. And even back then, I was very practical minded.
Programming.
And it just, you know, it didn't make scientific sense, you know, that this guy could do this. So I was 6 or 7. I think I might have been 7. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to stay up and wait for Santa Claus to come in. I'm going to see this bastard. I want to see who this guy is leaving these gifts. And so I start to hear commotion outside my door. And I always had my door cracked open a little bit because I was afraid of the dark. And I went and I peeked through that crack in the door, and I see my parents putting those gifts down. Son of a bitch. You know, I mean, I'm sure I didn't say that, but that's how they've been lying to me. And so the next morning, you know, "Hey kids, look, Santa's been here." I walk out like this. Yeah, I know you guys put that stuff there. And so that was a conspiracy, right? My mom and dad made up a story. They lied to me about something that was untrue. And from that point on, I felt like I really couldn't trust my parents anymore. If they're lying to me about this, then they could be lying to me about a whole bunch of other things, you know, religion, God, church, whatever.
Yeah. I made a meme not too long ago about stop lying to your children. And that was one of the examples that I pointed out. You start out believing lies because the people that you trust the most are deceiving you.
Right. I've never had children, and neither of you, right?
No, I haven't.
But I would never have lied to them about that. I would never have told them. I mean, the whole.
I think sometime in the past I might have, but I wouldn't anymore now that I know.
Well, like I said, because of that experience I had at that young age, I never liked it, and I never liked Christmas again after that. And the whole thing. How old were you when you realized there wasn't a Santa Claus?
I don't know. I don't think I ever believed that there was a real one. I think I always knew that it was my parents who bought this stuff. And they'd hide the packages away because my brother and I'd go looking around for stuff.
Right. Okay. So what about the moon landing?
I believed it was real until I recently saw other information that would lead you to believe that it's not. And there was this short video that I shared on Telegram where the two astronauts were on the moon, and this one astronaut sticks the flag into the ground. And in the process, he sticks the foot of the other guy, and the other guy falls over backwards, and there's this prop of this lunar lander that falls over.
That was a really hard one for me because I grew up on the Space Coast. I watched every launch from the early 8 stages, and I was a huge NASA fan. And it was around 2007 in a break room at a school I was teaching, and these two young British guys, they're like 23, 20, 24, 25. And the moon landing came up, and the two of them like, no, that's all bullshit. And of course my reaction is, no, man, I was there. I saw the rockets going up. And they're like, really? Did you see the men walking on the moon? Well, yeah, on TV. And I start to have this cognitive dissonance. So when I finally got my own computer with a good internet connection, that was one of the very first things that I started to investigate, because I wanted to prove these guys wrong, right? Well, it took me years, actually, of going back and forth, because there were some really good arguments for it, but then there were some really good arguments against it. And finally, after years of fighting through this cognitive dissonance that I had to come to the conclusion that it never happened. And then there are all these other things of faking space, like there were bubbles in space. I was seeing these videos that showed astronauts and then bubbles, and they're saying, no, they're underwater. And I believed that. I believed the conspiracy theory, but for the life of me, I couldn't understand why. Why would they make this lie? Until I clicked on my first flat Earth video. Then it made sense. Not just from that also took me about 6 months of looking into flat Earth. So have you gotten down that rabbit hole yet? The flat Earth?
No, I haven't.
Well, that's something we'll save for another day. But I can tell you this, that there is absolutely no evidence that we live on a spinning ball 25,000 miles in circumference. Just ain't so. And when I was able to wrap my head around that concept, then all these questions I had about the moon landing and the bubbles in space and all this fake space, it made sense. Now I understood why they did that stuff. So anyways, we're going to leave it there, and I'm going to give you something to think about. When you go up in an airplane and you look at the horizon, why does the horizon always remain at eye level? That can't happen on a sphere, on a globe. That's something that anybody can see for themselves. Another one is ships. If you're at the ocean and you see a ship disappear over the horizon, but lo and behold, you pull out a telescope and you can see it again. So I don't care how powerful your telescope is, if a ship has gone over a horizon, a curvature, then it's below this bulge of water and there's no way you could ever see it again. So I don't know if you're ready to for this discussion, but
it doesn't matter.
Well, no, you're right. In the long run, it doesn't matter. Well, it kind of did to me because I was such a huge space buff.
Yeah.
Uh,
I got this sugar packet one time. It says it's a matter of mind. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. And I
right,
apply
right.
that to many things.
Well, it kind of did to me because I mean, this is like one of the biggest lies that exists. That the very ground that you walk on isn't what you've been told, and there's a reason for this. Our senses, all our senses, tell us that we live on a flat, stationary plane, right? But if they make you believe this other thing, it creates this. When you go through life believing in a lie, then all these other lies are much easier to make you believe, right?
Yeah,
And
you
it's
build
also when your senses don't match what you know, it creates this uneasiness in you. This it's just like it throws off everything. So, anyways, I'm going to leave it there. And it, you know, if you want to look into it more, I the flat Earth thing is, I think, a key part. I think if everybody were to realize that we've been lied to for the past 400 years about the very nature of the ground we walk on, then that could get people to start looking at all these other things. So,
possible.
all right, Jerry. Well, listen, I thank you for having this talk with me, and let's do it again sometime.
Okay.
All right. See
Look
ya.
forward to